Hello friends and welcome. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can quickly connect any of your Webflow website to OpenAI's API in order to build a simple little app like this artist statement generator that I built here. So to give you a quick demo, I'm asking for my users their name, location, what's their main field, how the statement should sound, and then a few keywords that they can add. Then once they generate the new statement, it will prompt OpenAI's API and return the result inside of this input field so that the user can actually tweak the text and modify it a little bit before copying it and using it elsewhere. So the way this is built follows four main steps. The first one is that we're going to collect user details with the form inputs. Once we have those, we'll build our prompt that we're then going to send in the background to OpenAI's API. And once we have the response from that call, we'll display it on the same page without having to refresh the page or create any CMS item. So first, we're going to go through the project to see how it's built, and then we'll check out the JavaScript code and the make scenarios that are needed to make this work. The project will be a clonable, so you can clone it for free on Webflow by following the link in the description below if you want to get started quicker. So here we have two main elements. We have the form where we collect the inputs from our user, and then we'll have a second form where we'll have the input field in which we'll display the results. So first, in the form where we collect the inputs, we have our input fields, and I gave them all a unique ID that I'm going to use in my JavaScript to get the value for those inputs. Then we have our submit button, and under that we have a second form in which we'll display the results. And you might be wondering why a second form, and the reason is that I wanted to use that input field so that user can modify the text, and that is only possible inside of a form. So this is why we have that second form that is hidden for now, but I'll just make it visible. And here I also added a little loader so that my user would know that something's processing in the background, they should wait a little bit. But if we hide that loader, we can see that underneath we just have a simple field with an ID of statement text that we'll use and populate our result in. So now we can jump into the code, but before I just want to show you quickly the make scenario and we'll rebuild it together afterwards. But the way it works is that I basically created a webhook inside of make, so that's a unique URL that we'll be able to send data to, and we are going to send the prompt to this webhook. Then make is going to store my API keys, and I'm going to prompt OpenAI's API to get the result that will then send back as a webhook response to our website. Now, how does the code work is the most important part. So here, if I open my page settings and scroll down, so the first thing we're doing is that we're getting each of the four elements that we're going to need to interact with and storing them into variables. So we have the form with all our inputs, then we have the result wrap containing the result loader and the field in which we'll populate the text. So once we have that, we're ready to build our function for what happens when the user clicks on submit. So we're going to add an event listener to our form, and we're going to be watching for the submit event. And the first thing we want to do is we want to prevent the default behavior because we do not want Webflow to send the data back to their backend. We're going to process it ourselves. So we're going to prevent default. Now, once that's done, we need to give a little visual feedback to our users so that they know that something's happening and they're not waiting for nothing. So we're going to display the result wrapper, and then we're going to make sure that the result loader is visible as well. So it should be set to flex. We're also going to scroll down to the bottom part of the page where the results will be displayed. Now, once that's done, we can start building our prompt. So to build my prompt, I'm first of all getting all the value of each of the input field inside of my form. So I'm getting the name, the location, the field, the tone, and the keywords, assigning them to variables that I'm going to use to build my prompt. And to do so, I'm using the backtick literals, which are a very convenient way to build a string based on both text and JavaScript variables. So here, as you can see, my prompt will be generate an artist statement of around 100 words for an artist named variable name, who is based in location and works mostly with fields. The statement should sound tone and include the following keywords, and then I'm just putting the keywords variable. End of the backtick literal. Now that's going to give me the prompt that we need to send to OpenAI's API through Make's webhook. And to do that, we're going to use a fetch call. And so the fetch call will let us send a request to an external service and then also process the response coming from that external service. So the main argument is going to be obviously the URL of the external service we want to send the request to. In our case, this is going to be our make webhook. And you might be wondering, why don't we just query the OpenAI's API directly from the fetch call? And the reason is that to do that, we would have to expose our API keys inside of the public code. And we don't want to do that. So make is basically going to act as the middleman, which is going to keep our API keys safe. So we send the request to make sends the request to OpenAI, and then it's going to send us back whatever OpenAI sends back to make. So first, we're going to specify the webhook URL where we're sending the request. And then we can also add some parameters as an object. So in this case, I'm going to specify that the method is post, the content type is going to be JSON, and the body of our call will be made of two elements, our prompt, which is coming from this variable here, prompt. And we also need to set the max tokens, which is a number that will limit the length of the output that OpenAI will give you. So one token, I think, is about 4 characters. And the default value is set to 12 or 16 tokens. So that would be barely 1 or 2 sentences. And in our case, we want around 100 words. So you need to make sure that you have a number that will be greater to the output that you expect so that you don't have a truncated answer. So when the user clicks on submit, it's going to send a request to this URL with these parameters. And whenever we get a response from that external service, we're going to process that response. So it's going to come back as an object which we need to extract the text from. So we're going to apply the method .text to it. We're going to do response.text. Then that resulting bare text, we're just going to set as the value of the input field that we have ready to show the results. And we just need to hide the loader that was preventing the user from seeing that input field. So now we're going to jump into the make scenario, and we're actually going to rebuild it from scratch so you can see how to build such scenario. So here I have a new make scenario. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to search for webhooks. I'm going to go here, custom webhook. Make sure you don't pick the mail hook because this is for email, which is totally different. And now we're going to add a new webhook that I'll call tutorial demo. And we're going to save this. So now that we have a webhook created, it's listening to some simple data to know what kind of data structure to expect. So I'm just going to copy this address here. We're going to go back to my project. And inside of the code, I'm actually going to use this second page, which is just a clone of the home page. Inside of this second page, I'm going to change the webhook value and paste the webhook that we just created inside of make. I'm just going to press save. We're going to publish. Great. And now we need to train that webhook. Again, it's listening for some sample data. So we're just going to fill the form once, submit it, just so it knows what to expect for the data structure. And now you notice we haven't accepted, which is the default response to a webhook. It's not what we want. We're going to correct that later. So if I go back to my scenario, we can now see that the structure was successfully determined and we can keep going. So after that, we need to plug into OpenAI's API. So I'm just going to search here for OpenAI module. Select it. And what we want to do is we want to create a completion. Now, if it's your first time, you'll need to create your OpenAI connection. This is where you're going to put your API keys to connect to your own account. For me, it was already done. So then we're going to select the method and we want to create a prompt completion. And then we have to pick a model. So I'm not going to go in depth into the differences between each model and what they're good for and not good for. You can find plenty of information about that on the OpenAI's documentation website. But for this demo, the model that was the most suited was TextDaVinci 3. So I'm going to select that model. This is what's going to give you very similar result to ChatGPT if you want to get some simple text output. And then it's asking for the prompt. And you can see here that when I open this field, it's giving me the variables that are coming from my webhook, the values that are coming from my webhook. And we're going to use the prompt here. Now we still need to specify the max tokens, otherwise the result will be too short. And for that, we're going to select advanced settings. And we're not going to talk much about temperature top P. Again, I encourage you to check OpenAI's documentation if you want to learn more about that. We're just going to specify the max token here by putting the value coming from our webhook. And that's it. Now we're set. And if we do a run once, I'm just going to save. If we run this scenario once, go back to my previous page here, and I'm just going to resubmit with the same value. It's still accepted because we haven't set the response yet. But if I go back to my scenario here, you can see that as the output of the OpenAI module, we now have our text right there. So that's what we need to send back to our website as a webhook response. So I'm going to add a third module here, and I'll search for webhooks again. And here we're going to select webhook response. So when the status is equal to 200, meaning that everything went well, we are going to send back the text inside the choices, like so. And now that we have that, the code is already ready. It's going to grab whatever comes back as a webhook response, and it's going to display it inside of our input field. So now we can do save, run once again, or actually I'm going to activate it. Perfect. So now we have our second scenario that's live. And if I go back to this page and click on generate once again, this time we should get our result. There we go. And once again, it's in an input field, so I could correct it if I don't want those two first words, and then copy it and use it elsewhere. So that's it. This is how you can quickly connect to any of your Webflow website to OpenAI's API using a simple fetch call. I'll put the link in the description below for the clonable of this project. And if you're new to Webflow or Make, feel free to use my affiliate links again in the description below. That really helps me out build more content like this. And if this was useful, feel free to leave a thumbs up or to subscribe for the next videos. Wishing you all the best and have a great day.